How's the class going?
Oh, they're killing it. They're absolutely killing it. They've got the last piece that we did, the last newscast thing that we did, and one of my kids got Clay Guida, never been knocked out in UFC. Has got a fight coming up on ESPN December the 2nd. He got an interview with him. He's got an MLB pitcher coming up. We've got a former Houston Texan football player, NFL, who's going to be on one of our shows here pretty soon.
Oh, wow.
Interviewed Dr. McDonald, superintendent. I mean, I told my kids, hey, go for it. You know, the worst they can say is no. And to their credit, most of these people have said yes. It's been pretty interesting. It's been kind of cool.
How are they reaching out to these people?
Email,
phone?
Jackson Rambanus his father's a pro fisherman. So he's got some kind of built-in contacts. But like with the Texans player, I know a guy who knows a guy. And some of these, there's a kid who's got a couple of Razorback players who are coming on the show next month who just, he networked through these things. And then it just straight up with the UFC, with the B-roll, the B-roll footage that they wanted, they just emailed him and asked him, hey, we'd like a press kit. And UFC sent us everything and said, we'd love to help you guys out whenever you can. So, I've always told them, don't be afraid to take the shot. So, the worst they can say is no, and you don't have you're left with the same thing you started out with. Mm-hmm. So, not a big deal. And to their credit, they're going for it. It's been kind of cool. It's been kind of cool to watch.
I bet that gets the class pretty pumped up.
Oh my gosh, yeah. When we watch that newscast, we critique all of our work once it goes out. We go back in, we find the things that we like, what we don't like, and that piece right there was really special. And it just shows the kids that you could do anything. That's really important.
Yeah. And how old are these? What grade?
We're right now 9th through 12th. Mm-hmm. And the kids who are getting these interviews are predominantly 11th and 12th graders. But, 16, 17-year-old kids who just got a press kit from the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That's pretty boss. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. Has Russellville ever had it's broadcasting, right? That's the name of the class.
Not to the level that we have. I think there was an attempt at doing this back in the 90s, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. I know East has done some videography and that kind of thing, but we've never had anything to this level and this dedication and this administrative support. That's really, really neat. We're only in our second year, so I can't wait to see what year 3 and year 4 brings. It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty cool. It's nice to see that broadcasting's still alive and well.
It was pretty cool. Go ahead and introduce yourself for everyone listening.
Okay, I'm Drew Brent, living in this area for pretty much my entire life. Graduated from Dardanelle. I teach at Russellville High School, and I volunteer here and there. So every once in a while, if it involves a microphone, you've probably seen me, and that's really just because I don't know how to stop, and I work cheap. So that's who I am.
Anyone that has money, you're there.
When I say cheap, generally it means free. So
Gotcha. So have you been in broadcasting pretty much
since I was 17? I got my first radio gig at 17. I'm 36 now, so longer than I haven't been. And next year, I think will be 20 years.
What were you doing at the station? Were you a DJ? Or?
When I first started at 17, I was sweeping floors and running a board for basketball games. Back in the old days, you had to run, mixers and sliders and that kind of thing, make sure that everybody went to break on time. And then eventually I was just kind of, lingering around, hoping that maybe somebody would open up with a DJ spot. And finally somebody did. And I got weekends from 6 to midnight on Saturday nights. And, I was 18, I think, when I got that spot. I thought, man, I'm Saturday night DJ on 100.9 KWKK. I've become a superstar, and it was fun. Yeah, that's just how I got my start. I applied for the job and was sweeping floors and doing whatever I was asked to do, and just waited around hoping for an opportunity, and one came along.
So what was your first show like? What were you doing? Just playing music? Were you talking at all?
Yeah, I was talking a little bit, but this was in the infancy of voice tracking, so that's an insider term. But basically all that meant was the music was already pre-programmed, so you would just go in and record the vocal spots. And so it would take about 20 minutes to do a 6-hour show because all you're doing is just putting something into a computer. And I would go in and introduce the last song, do a live read for a spot, or a quick little news bit, and then I would reintroduce the next Billy Joel song that was on tap for the evening. And that's basically what I did. And then eventually got into some play-by-play and kind of took off from there.
Wow. What got you wanting to do that from the beginning?
I can't remember a time where I didn't want to do this. Quite literally, since I was 2-3 years old, I was fascinated by cameras and audio and watching the news and current events. And I was fascinated by the way it was all put together. I remember when I was a kid, my parents bought me one of those old school camcorders, the one that's shoulder mounted camcorders. And I made short films and movies and whatever I could shoot. Fake newscasts, those were good, cringeworthy, as the kids might say now. But I've never wanted to do anything else. This has been my passion since I can remember. I literally cannot remember ever wanting to do anything else.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, I had a fake newscast. We called it KORN News. Remember to watch us because we're corny. That was the line.
So you weren't going with like Korn the music. You were going with corny because we're corny.
Exactly.
Well, you could have done like the rock music element to it, right?
Right. What was the earliest movie or show or whatever you made? Do you remember anything from back then?
Yeah, the earliest thing that I can remember making in any kind of studio environment, I was in 5th grade. Because Dardanelle Elementary School had a small closed circuit TV studio, and for the late 90s, that was pretty high tech. And so anybody who was interested in doing television production, we would go in there and do the news for the school. And we tried. My friend Corey Thone, his last name is. His last name's Stone. He carries a lot of weight around here, but he's actually now the communications director for the Kansas State Lottery, so he's doing very well for himself. Corey and I wanted to revolutionize 5th grade television, and so we would try to do like zany antics, and we did, sketch comedy and that kind of thing. All of it was so ridiculous, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I look back on that and thought, yeah, we did some pretty cool stuff for 5th graders.
Oh, I bet. And I bet that was a ball. And how long did you have in that spot? Was it like a 20-minute show, a 30-minute show?
I can't remember, but I feel like we were doing like 10 and 15 minutes. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, I challenge anyone to talk about anything and be compelling for 15 minutes. So, I think it was like a 15-minute block where we had school announcements, and then we had like 3 or 4 minutes where we could do whatever we wanted to do. And so I remember one time we dressed one of our female friends up as the wrestler Sting and interviewed Sting. And I think she hit someone with a bat. That was maybe over the line. But, I mean, those were the kinds of things that we were thinking about in 5th grade. We just wanted to do something that nobody had seen before. And it was really interesting. It's funny to look back on that now and go, the mindset of 5th grade Drew when it comes to broadcasting is still pretty much the same mindset that 36-year-old Drew has. Like, hey, what's something that we can do that's never been done? How do we do something different? It's always been there.
Have you found like broadcasting and radio and TV to be a medium where you can constantly innovate over 30 years?
You have to. You have to consistently innovate. I mean, well, if you take a look at the late 90s when we were doing KIDS, by the way, was the call letters for our little news station, kids in Dardanelle schools. So nice. You had KORN, we had KIDS. But even in that time, from 99 to 2005, when I graduated, started college, and got the job over at KCJC and KWKK, things had changed. The internet existed. It was in its infancy in 1999. So in that 6-year time period, you were looking at uploadable clips, and people could see news on demand, which had never been something they could do before. And then 10 years later, or even actually like 3 or 4 years after that, you have the debut of the iPhone, and now you can stream anything that you want to from your device. And even now you've got 24/7 streaming networks, where we thought cable news 24/7 was going to be the be all end all, and now it's sort of dying out to streaming platforms. So yes, television is a way to be inventive and innovative, because if you're not, you're going to die out. You will become passe. And with the shorter attention spans now, you've really got to get innovative. The long form television show just doesn't really work anymore unless you're John Oliver. So, yeah, absolutely. You have to be innovative. You have to think outside the box. You have to challenge yourself. And that's a lot of fun.
Where do you see media now? I mean, is it at a good point in your opinion? Is this?
Oh, no. And it depends.
Is it going to get better?
Well, it depends too on what you ask when you say the word media. And I talk to my students about this all the time, because when people say the media, and I don't know if you can see the air quotes that I'm using right now, the media, generally they're speaking about news media. And the media is blamed for every bad thing that has ever happened. And they should take some responsibility for it. But the media is not just television news. It's periodicals, it's print journalism, it's online, it's definitely social media. So the media as a whole is not healthy at all. When you have so much information, you have a lot of misinformation. And I don't think anybody could have foreseen that. I don't think anybody really truly believed, if I had told you 25, 30 years ago that you're going to have a device in your pocket where you can access the entirety, the totality of the world's information, that you could not trust 80% of what it was that you were reading, because when everybody has a platform, nobody does. And it's really hard to disseminate what's real and what's not. So is the media healthy from a standpoint of truth telling? No, not really. From a standpoint of entertainment, it's never been healthier, because you have so many options, and these streaming platforms are buying anything they can get their hands on just to produce enough content. So content creators are having a ball because they are highly in demand. Writers and producers are having a ball because they're heavily in demand. So it really depends on which side of the media you're asking is healthy. Is news media healthy? No. Is entertainment media healthy? From a financial standpoint, absolutely.
Yeah, it is interesting, because you can't trust anything you see anymore, anything you read. And it's really hard to know sometimes, what you're reading is true. How do you think we fix that? I know Twitter, I don't really use Twitter, but I know they're trying to fix that through, like you see these big tech companies trying to they're trying to decide what's true and not, because they probably have a responsibility to make sure there's not a ton of information on their platforms. Sure. I don't know, though. I mean, do you have any ideas?
Education will really help that. Education will really help that. And the elimination of affirmation bias would really go a long way. But I don't know how to fix that portion of it, because I can take something that is 100% verifiably true and present it in a way that is articulate and intelligent and present it to the masses. But if it goes against what somebody has already decided is true, then they're not going to believe it anyway. And that's been the danger of the media so far, has been they bought into affirmation bias for the bottom line. But what they've come across now is that nobody trusts you, because you did buy into that. Rupert Murdoch really bought into that when he started Fox News in the mid-90s, because he saw a whole subsection of people that had been alienated by CNN and thought, okay, I can go and get a conservative group of people and I can make a ton of money off of them. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. But what that leads to is, I'm going to make sure that my advertisers are happy, so I've got to make sure that my demographic is happy. And so therefore, maybe it's not necessarily as important to tell them everything that's true. Maybe we should add more pundits. Maybe we should add some more voices. Maybe we should add some things in there that people already subconsciously believe. And then you see this explosion of misinformation, and it all comes back to people who wanted to hear what they wanted to believe in the first place. So how do you fix that? I don't know, because that's a mindset. It's a strange mindset. Education will help. Basic civics will help that. Understand? I mean, just how does the world actually work will help that. Understanding who actually can. This is a great example. Billy Reeder is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. He was a professor of journalism at Arkansas Tech. And one of the assignments that he made his students do was a writing project on who controls gas prices. That was the entirety of the paper was who controls gas prices. And the challenge was, you hear so much rhetoric, no matter who's in office, if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Well, the oil prices or the gas prices have risen. Thanks who was ever in office. We're going to blame whoever the president is. But the truth of the matter is, it's far more complex than that. So there's so much more nuance in the world that is occurring that people either are willfully ignorant of or unwillfully ignorant of, but they're still ignorant of it. And you can't combat that without education. So you've got to eliminate affirmation bias. I don't know how you do that. But I think, a basic understanding of the way that the world works and having the open mind to understand and try to grasp that would certainly go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of slightly pivot here, I saw Tech recently is offering like a content creator degree, something along the lines. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I've heard that they are doing that. I don't know too much about it. I know that it's something that they're offering, but I don't know really the nuance, the ins and outs of it.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of the ins and outs of it, I saw a bunch of people on Facebook kind of commenting and talking about how dumb it was. And maybe it is. I don't know. I always like to err on the side of it's probably there for a good reason. Maybe someone's put some thought into it. But it kind of goes along with what you're saying. People, they jump to a conclusion. They don't consider that maybe there's more to something and that they could be wrong. And that people bring that into every fact. I probably do. You probably do. It's
absolutely.
A very human thing.
Everyone, if they would admit they have their own biases when they walk into a conversation or they walk into any kind of informational meeting, it would make their lives so much easier. We all have biases, whether we want to or not. And they're not. Bias is not necessarily a bad word. It's just a belief based on your personal experience. That's all bias is. I can only see through the perspective that I have. I can only see through the lens that I've been given. That's a bias. It's not a negative it can't be a negative thing, but it's not inherently negative, if that makes sense. So just affirming the fact that, okay, yeah, I probably got some biases here, would really make the world a lot easier. Yeah, I'm biased because of this, but if I can be objective for a moment, perhaps the knowledge that's being imparted will help me overcome that.
Mm-hmm. What do you see the viewpoint is of your students coming up now? And 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, how do they view the world? Is it are they positive, eager to learn, or are they jaded? Because I don't know. I feel like my generation, as we're aging, we're getting more jaded. How do the younger people feel about it?
Well, I think every generation gets a little more jaded as they grow.
Yeah,
I think that just comes with age. I mean, so I wouldn't get too upset about that. I'm a little more jaded now than I was 10 years ago. The older you get, the less ideological you become, I truly believe. And I think that certain principles just become what they are. Like, you understand facts. And so the ideologues who exist out there, I applaud them for not falling into the trap of cynicism. As far as my students are concerned, there is an eagerness to learn. I'm fascinated every time we talk about something that they don't know, because it opens up a whole world of questions, and things that maybe they didn't understand before, maybe something that wasn't thoroughly explained, or just something that they'd never thought of, presenting things in a new way. One of the assignments that I have them do is I have them take a story that is in the news, and I make them go to 3 or 4 different news sources and see how it's covered, so that they can kind of get a firm understanding of how, okay, well, this one is presenting it this way and this one's presenting it this way. In one way, that jades them, and then in another way, I think it opens their eyes to, okay, yeah, there are definitely some biases in the world, but it doesn't seem to change their outlook. It's an overwhelmingly positive outlook. And perhaps that's youthful exuberance, perhaps even maybe a bit of youthful ignorance, but I think we could all use a little bit of that. They have an incredible mind for what it is that this business is. Even if you talk about it in terms of the business, this is the most prepared generation that we've ever seen, because these are the kids. If you're 17 years old, you were born in 2006. You don't know a world without an iPhone. You don't know the world without streaming. You don't know the world without instant information. And the positive side of that is I can literally go and find anything that I want at any point. The negative side of this is I can literally go and find anything I want at any point. And so they've come up with this, and somehow they do have a positive mindset for the most part. You know, they're teenagers. Teenagers are up and down. We all were. For the most part, they're overwhelmingly positive, and that strikes me. It gives me hope for where we're going.
No, it's good to hear. It gives me hope too, because yeah, I mean, I'm 25 years old, so I've just recently left high school, really, and it's sometimes
25.
25.
Okay, well,
Yeah, 25.
nice.
3-year-old and a wife. Got started early.
Okay, yeah, getting in the family swing of things pretty early on. Good for you.
Yep. That was it was a happy accident. We'll just say that. I was working on an ambulance at the time, which was a horrible career. Good job for the people that can do that. Not me. Did it for almost a couple of years there. And that is when the cynicism started. Drew, I'll tell you that. That's when life for me started to go, whoop. You know, eventually it's been fixed, but that sucked.
So why was it that made the cynicism start?
Lack of, I was still in college at the time. I started working on an ambulance because my friend, he was a paramedic, and he's like, Tal, you can make a ton of money on your days off. You have a ton of time to do homework. You get 24-hour shifts, ton of money. It's like, cool, let's do it. So I took the class, became an EMT, and sleep deprivation, number one.
Yeah.
Fast food all the time, number two. So you combine these two things with just long hours with people you didn't really like necessarily. And
Sounds like the media.
Studies started going, took a downturn. So I dropped out of school. I was actually getting paid to go to tech. But I got a refund check out of that, and I was just burnt out. So I quit the job and then took that money and went to Italy for a while. And that was fun. I had a good time. But anyways, long story short, a lot of things happened after that. Got married, had a kid. Now I'm feeling better than ever. But back then, that's probably when, like, that was the first time reality slapped me in the face.
And that's where I think the birth of a lot of cynicism comes from, is that you come up in this almost, some kids, unfortunately, I see this every day. There are some kids that already have that cynicism because reality slapped them in the face way earlier than it should have ever had to. Mm-hmm. But the moment that you've had, let's assume that you've had a relatively normal, whatever that is, childhood, and you go out on your own and you realize, oh my God, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. Probably a little cynicism starts to creep up. I think that early cynicism goes away when you're able to overcome. And the first time that in a month you paid all your bills on your own, I think that changes it for some people. Like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I can do this. Maybe maybe I don't have to be cynical. Now it comes back. It comes back after every little phase of life. But you can outgrow that. You can outgrow and you can come that. And I think sometimes the word cynicism is confused with wisdom. You know, I do think that sometimes those two words are confused. I do have some cynicism in me, but I'm far wiser than I was 10 years ago, and I'm not nearly as wise as I'm going to be a year from now, 10 years from now. That is how you combat cynicism, is understanding that everything's a learning experience. Oh, yeah. It still creeps in. You know, I'm sure the EMT thing, the things that you saw on that job were very much a learning experience for you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And what I've learned now is that failing and failure is like the best teacher ever. I love to fail, like I genuinely do. Sometimes it can really hurt, like in the moment it's not fun, but you learn nothing can teach you better than that.
As Yoda said in The Last Jedi, just throwing that out there.
What did he say in The Last Jedi? I've kind of burned that movie out of my memory.
Pretty much every Star Wars fan has, but in the scene with Yoda and Luke, he says, failure the best teacher is. And you know, but I'm not going to do the voice. I can't. But that's how he's. That's how, I mean, failure. He was absolutely right. You know, success can't happen without failure. And if it does, you won the lottery. And even if you won the lottery, there are so many lottery winners who go broke after getting all that money because they'd never had success to deal with before. Or they've never had failure to teach them how to succeed when they had that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lady that won recently in Clarksville, and I was so happy to see she was anonymous.
Yeah.
That's like rule number one.
Right.
Always be anonymous.
Never admit that you won the lottery.
Yeah. And I think what really set me up for failure, which again is a good thing in hindsight, but school was so easy for me. And I know it's not easy for everybody, but for me, I saw it as a game. It is a game, at least in my high school. It was a game where you were just playing to get a grade. So I didn't have to study. I could pass my classes. I gamed the system because a lot of classes, not all of them, but a lot of them are just set up in a way for you not to actually learn, but for you to get an A. And then when I got to college, again, that was also like a slap to the face because now you actually have to put in the work. And I had developed no discipline. And what I thought was in high school was actually me. I thought at the time, like, wow, this is so easy. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I robbed myself of the discipline building experience that I could have had. But, classes like East and probably like your class, where you're able to devote yourself to something. It's almost a little bit student driven.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I think it's a great thing.
I remember in high school was the first time that high school was, I'm a lot like you. High school was pretty easy for me. I didn't really have to try if I didn't want to. But the first time I ever got smacked right in the face was, and I will thank her for this forever. She probably doesn't even remember it. But Dr. Diane Gleason, who is an incredibly brilliant human being, was a professor at Arkansas Tech for a long time, was a history teacher at Dardanelle High School, and now does so much great work for the city of Dardanelle and working in the Historical Society. She was one of my history teachers in high school, and I was in her advanced placement class, and I was doing okay. I wasn't doing great. If I had really tried, I probably would have done better because I love history, but I was really just coasting. And so I remember I was going to get letters of recommendation for a scholarship. And I went to ask her because her name carries a ton of weight. And I will go to Dr. Gleason and I say, ma'am, I'd be honored if you would write me a recommendation letter. And she looked at me and she said, Mr. Brent, I'll absolutely write you a recommendation letter. And in my brain goes, all right, perfect. I'm in. She goes, but it's not going to be a good one. And I thought, and it was a shot to the ego. It was a shot to the brain. I was like, wait a minute. What? It was like, you're not trying nearly as hard as you should be. You could do better, and I will not put my name behind you. And it blew my mind. It was a really humbling moment. I didn't stay humble very long. I let the ego creep back in, definitely. But in that moment, that's a poignant moment in my history where I remember thinking, oh yeah, I got this. I'm going to go and coast. I'm going to go ahead and, because I can talk my way through anything. Not her. I couldn't. And the worst part was is I knew she was right. And I couldn't swallow that at the time. And looking back on it now, I'm so thankful she didn't write me that letter. I'm so thankful she didn't because I had not earned it. I did not deserve it. She was right. She was right about me.
Yeah, it always hurts when you know it's true, but it's always better in the end,
Yeah. When and if you ever come to terms with it. And sometimes I don't. Some days are better than others. Some days I don't. Some days I still get a little bit of that cockiness. My wife's off camera right now, and I bet she might agree with me on that. Yeah, she's shaking her head. Yeah, you can absolutely still do that. So
that's probably part of broadcasting too, and journalism and content and all this thing. Like it attracts egos.
Absolutely.
A lot of egos in the field.
And if you want to be successful, you've got to have a bit of panache. All right, you've got to have a bit of. As the late Anthony Caton would say, you've got to have a bit of braggadocio, and he would say it like that too. The greatest teacher at the history of Arkansas Tech University, in my opinion, the late, great Anthony Caton. And it does attract ego because, people who want to do things like this generally are people who like to be seen. I want to be in front of the camera. Well, why do you want to be on the camera? Well, I want to report and do something good for the community. All right, but also... why do you want to be on the camera? Why do you want to go and have your voice heard over everything? There is got to be a little bit of self-awareness there. Hasn't been the case for me. The self-awareness side of it, not until probably very recently, where I could come to terms with the fact that, hey, I do love broadcasting. I love the history of broadcasting. I'm a huge late night talk show, old school Johnny Carson fan. I just love everything around it. I always wanted to be a part of that, but I wanted to be the guy. You know, why do you want to be the guy? Is it ego or insecurity or two things that are wrapped up in the same thing? I don't know. But yeah, it absolutely attracts some egos. But it also surprisingly attracts some of the genuinely nicest people I've ever met too.
It does. And you've got to succeed, most people have to eventually be humble and accept that, they need help from other people. For me, and probably for a lot of my generation, it was YouTubers. You be a YouTuber. I bet you see that a lot with your students.
Oh my gosh, yeah. TikTok famous. I want to get TikTok famous.
Yeah. For me, it's my first YouTube channel I started when I was 12 years old. Started making videos.
What were you making them about?
Minecraft.
Of course it was Minecraft.
Yeah, classic move. Eventually, I started getting on camera, doing things like that, special effects. There's got to be. I know there's a scene around here. There's a bunch of creative people in the area, but I honestly don't know how to find them, Drew. Like, where do you find them? I know you probably meet just a lot of them in your line of work, but where do these people go to meet, to network?
It's so strange that you mentioned that, because all of the people that I know in that kind of realm or field, I met totally by circumstance, totally because I was working in a different line of work at the time, or I was working for someone in Little Rock, or working. I mean, it was all kind of happenstance. Johnny Story is the most legendary radio host in this area, probably the most recognized voice in this area by far. I met him working as a broom boy at KCJC, and he's been very, very good to me. Hope Adair is one of those people too that I met when she was working at KARV, and I was volunteering with some stuff for Food Stock and River Valley Food for Kids. You just find that a lot of these people, what I have found is that a lot of these people are involved in building something, whether it's Main Street Russellville, whether it's the school district, whether it's the River Valley Arts Center, whether it's the music scene. Some guy named Rob and I met through the music scene and then partnered up and helped make Food Stock a thing. You just find these people gravitate, at least it's been my experience, that these people are looking to create. Creators want to create all the time, but they're also trying to create a seemingly better version of the reality that we have. And so I have found that they gravitate towards nonprofits in the area, music in the area, the arts. And if you are involved in a lot of these things, then you can meet them through by proxy, even, really.
I think that's what I'm starting to learn. And I recently met Hope. Actually met her over at Food Stock the other day. Were you there?
No. We had a previous engagement over at Arkansas Tech that night.
Okay. Well, it was cool. That was my first time going to.
Yeah, Food Stock's a great event.
Yep. Creators want to create. I like that. I guess you just have to look where people are building things, and then you'll find them. Yeah. What do you think about the area of Russellville in particular, kind of how it's changed over the past few years? Where do you see it going?
Ooh, loaded question. Loaded question.
Is it?
Well, I mean, it is, because you the more things change, the more they stay the same. I don't know that I could give you I don't think I could give you an an educated answer on that, because truth be told, I don't know. And I'm not sure anybody does. I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of great ideas, who want to do a lot of great for the community, who are doing a lot of good for the community. But I also think that there are those people who will do their absolute best to make sure it doesn't change. And that has been painted as a bad thing for the longest time. And that's been one of the biggest mistakes I've made, is accusing people who didn't want anything to change as being anti-growth. They're not anti-growth necessarily, not all of them anyway, but they are pro-lifestyle. Does that make sense? I mean, you've lived in a place for so long. You've established your roots. Your grandparents lived here. Your parents lived here. You've been on the same piece of land for, 50, 60 years. It's not that they're anti-growth. It's just, why do I want to change? I've got it great here. And so to ask the question, hey, where do you see it going? I think at some point a happy medium is going to happen, where the people who don't want it to change have to admit, okay, if we want this city to not necessarily grow, but stay alive, We have to encourage some change. And then the people who want things to change, and this is certainly not all of them, but the people who want things to change, who have been so adamant about, almost demonizing those people who wanted to keep the lifestyle the way they are, they don't need to necessarily go that hard anymore. You've got the irresistible force and the immovable object kind of clashing against one another. And as long as that is the thing, as long as that is the fight, you don't want to grow and you want to change everything that I believe in, you won't see progress. It won't happen. You'll see forced progress. And it also depends on your definition of progress. And I know I say that phrase a lot. It depends on your definition of, but truth be told, context matters. Is growth in Russellville defined by you as a new business? If it is, you'll see some new businesses pop up. You always will. Is growth in Russellville defined as having an identity? I would say to you, and I've said this to leaders in Russellville at a meeting recently, that I do believe that Russellville has an identity crisis. I don't think we really know who we are. As a city, we have great bike trails, and we can tell you all the amenities that we have, but can we tell you who we are? Until you answer that question, until you're able to reconcile that pro-growth is not anti-lifestyle and pro-lifestyle is not anti-growth, then we are going to be at a stalemate for a long time.
Wow. No, dude, you just blown me away, because I think you just hit it right on the head. And I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Which part?
Just the two forces and how they're affecting each other, right? And maybe, yeah. So it's going to take, what I think it's going to take, Drew, is a good communicator, or probably a group of good communicators to figure out a path ahead, and not unilaterally, but in these little small splinters, right? Like a good path for this issue. And that's probably what you're really helping your kids achieve, your students achieve.
Oh, I hope so.
Teaching them those skills.
You can't look at an older generation as passé. That's the biggest mistake young people make. It's the biggest mistake I made when I was starting out in broadcasting, because I wanted to come in and be the young gun. I believed, and this is coming back to your question. I wanted to come in and be the young gun. I was going to be the guy who changed all of broadcasting. I was going to be the broadcast superstar. And these guys have been doing it for 50 years or so. They don't know. They don't know who Drew Brent is. And the truth of the matter is that when you start thinking about people as passé, you are robbing yourself of the wisdom that they have. You are robbing yourself of the fact that, hey, this town that you want to change doesn't exist without the people who built it. And so if you immediately come in and say, hey, what you're doing is not working anymore, they have a legitimate argument to say, it's worked for 50 years. Who are you to tell me it's not working? It's done pretty well for me thus far. And so, I have been adamant about bringing in broadcasters and people who are in our field who have been doing this for a long time to talk to our kids about it, because it's not that the business is changing, yes, but the methodology and the idea behind it is exactly the same. You're telling a story. You're telling a story, and you can't tell a story without the fundamentals. Do you have a good narrative? Do you have something that's interesting? Do you have something that will compel people to change or emotionally affect them in a certain way? And it doesn't matter if that's a movie from the 1930s that has no sound to it at all, or if it's a 2024 motion picture event of the year. The basic idea is still the same. If you take that and you apply that to the culture of Russellville, Arkansas, then the people who helped build this place should absolutely not only be consulted, but respected for the fact that they built this place. This is not an area that has been known for economic boom, and yet we have a decent economy here. So they've done something right. You can't just push that to the side. And if you're someone young with ideas, then as the older generation, you have to recognize that they have knowledge that maybe I don't have. Classic example of this is just today in my classroom. We put out our last Cyclone Broadcasting news show last week. Go follow the Cyclone Broadcasting page on Facebook, on Instagram. Thank you. But we were talking about, that's a cheap plug, by the way. That's a cheap plug, and I'm not ashamed of it. But we were having a conversation about analytics on Instagram, on social media, and these students are telling me, well, if you really want to boost the algorithm on Instagram, you really want to get likes, they're educating me on the platform that they're using. That knowledge is invaluable to me because now not only can I teach it more effectively, but then also I have a new way to communicate the message that I've been wanting to communicate. Mm-hmm. I could get a 30-second reel of a lecture, a really poignant part of a lecture, to them in a way that they consume so much easier than I can ask them to log on to Google Classroom and watch this 20-minute video that you will fall asleep in the middle of. And I know you will. But if I hit the high points at these times in the way that they've educated me, my goal is achieved, albeit a new way. I've often told people the message hasn't changed, but the method of delivery has. No one uses the Pony Express anymore. So, and that's not a bad thing. The Pony Express is just fine, but you're probably going to send a text, right? Right, yeah, because it's the time. Your message didn't change, just the method of delivery. And so, I'm seeing the value of the wise educating the young, but the young also educating the wise, and how that's a symbiotic relationship, and how you've got to have both in order to make it work, if that makes any sense at all.
It does. It does. And I've definitely been the young, ignorant, young gun, as you said as well. I made a video once that caught me a little bit of flack. And in the video...
just one?
Oh, I've definitely made more.
I was about to say, come on, rookie, you can do better than that.
To right now. And I said something about the paper. Well, I didn't like go after the paper. I just said, what was it that I said? It was something about like, I think Russellville has overall, and this is something I still more or less agree with. It's left, the younger generation in a lot of ways have like left the methods of delivery that are established, that a lot of the news flows through. And those news channels haven't started using those methods of delivery.
Sure.
Like shorts, for example, and reels and these videos and these ways to communicate the way a lot of people consume media. And more or less I said that in a video, and I don't remember what I said about the paper, but it made a few people upset. And I support the paper. Like,
sure.
Great. It's not.
We had Travis Simpson on the other day.
It's not a medium that I personally consume a lot, and that's a personal thing. Maybe I should do that more, Maybe that's something I should go buy the paper more and read it. But for whatever reason, I think there's a lot of young people that don't do that. And it'd be great to see the paper address that, in other forms of media and still get their message across and still achieve that goal. But I don't know, this isn't a war I personally have against any medium. But
no, certainly not. And not to give anything away, I think you're going to see that soon. Just a spoiler, without giving away a spoiler. I think you're going to see that soon. Well, I think you may see some Cyclone broadcasting students make some appearances.
Good. I've heard great things about Travis Simpson. I haven't personally met him, but I've
Travis
heard
Simpson
talk
is
very well of him.
Top to bottom one of the finest journalists I've ever met. He really could have gone on to the Democrat Gazette or a bigger paper if he had wanted to. He just loves it here. And the approach that he has taken with the Courier since becoming managing editor is exactly the approach that every radio station and newspaper that is locally owned in the country should take. And the Courier is not locally owned, but if you want to maintain your business in that forum, then you have to be, as I have called it, aggressively local. Aggressively local. A lot of these small town papers, so they subscribe to the AP Wire and they'll have the front page and maybe the 1A or the 1B in local news, and then they're going to fill it up with AP stories. And I can find Associated Press stories on the Associated Press, but I can't find stories about the fact that Russellville High School is a 7-time defending Quiz Bowl championship, and their first match that they played last week or 2 weeks ago, they won, and they're on track to win their 8th straight. The Associated Press is not going to cover that, but we got a dynasty here in Russellville with Quiz Bowl. You know, the swim team just won their state championship last year. Again, I'm probably not going to see that on KATV, but I should see that in the paper because I think that's their third straight. You know, and that's just two examples of, you know, great things. You know, we have some big time Arkansas Broadcast Hall of Famers who are coming to Russellville High School to speak to our students. You should see that in the paper too. NASA's coming to Russellville, for God's sake. These are all big events that impact Russellville people. And what Travis has done is he has taken that and he has said, I am going to post every picture of every kid. I'm going to write everything I can about the school. I'm going to write everything I can about city council. I'm going to write everything I can about the things that are happening here because you can only find that here. That's absolutely the approach. The radio equivalent of that is Johnny's Story still. And that's why radio still does so well here, is because it's still local and it still matters.
100%. 100%. There's Johnny has such a iconic presence, like you were saying. There's commercials that aren't even that. It's just Johnny speaking. I have them seared into my memory.
Yeah.
Just from like hearing them all the time.
Tom Camerling's the same way for me.
Yeah. I need to go meet Travis Simpson one of these days.
You really do.
And talk to him.
Well, you know what? This is what I would have you do. If you're going to go talk to Travis Simpson, introduce yourself, sit down, and then say, tell me everything you know. And just listen to him. And he's going to laugh and he's going to say, I don't know what I can tell you. He can. He can tell you the ins and outs of the city. He can tell you what journalistic integrity is. He could probably still recite the AP style book. I mean, and by the way, his new book is a cheap plug for him. Strong Like You comes out in March 2024 and has already gotten rave reviews and was trending on the Amazon top 10 men's mental health fiction section, which I didn't know was a thing, but he's trending on that. That's amazing. Here's a guy from Russellville doing big time things. Eli Craner's another one, another local author who has done very well. His second book is about to come out as well. Very, very well. And he was, I'm fairly certain that a consultant for the New York Times actually reviewed his book and gave it a great review. I'm not certain on that, but I know that there was an affiliation there. They got great reviews on that. So there's a lot here. And I'm thankful for a guy like Travis who will cover it.
Good stuff. I will do that, Drew.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. You absolutely need to just sit and listen to him, and you need to listen to Tom Camerling.
Okay, Tom Camerling.
Yes.
And you said he was
a radio and still is a radio legend. But he retired from radio, oh Lord, probably 15, 20 years ago at this point, and was working for Arkansas Nuclear One. But he was the public address announcer for Arkansas Tech for 50 years up until this year when he retired. And his voice, I can still hear every time I drive past a Taco John's, because I can hear him say, it's Taco Tuesday at Taco John's. Go in and get a 50-cent taco for today only. It's Taco Tuesday at Taco John's. I mean, like, it's still there. Johnny Story and Tom Camerling, if you want an interesting story about those two guys, they were synonymous with one another in this area for broadcasting for a long time. In 1987, December of 1987, a horrific tragedy happened in Dover.
Gene Simmons?
Ronald Gene Simmons, yes. And the Ronald Gene Simmons murder happens. They are literally listening to the police scanner as Gene Simmons is driving all over town, and they're going from stop to stop trying to report. Overnight, this became a national news story in 1987. And they went from being local news reporters on KRV to being CBS News radio correspondents, because they were boots on the ground to what was at the time the largest single-family mass killing in U.S. history. And so they have a very unique perspective on what it is to cover local news, because they were in it. They were doing it. And the biggest story that ever occurred in this area from a crime standpoint, you could argue Nona Dirksmeyer too, rest in peace. But at that time was the biggest thing that had ever happened here. And they went from local to national overnight. And I did an interview with Tom a couple of years ago talking about that, and just the switch that had to be put on, how careful they had to be with with their wording and how careful they were trying to be with crafting the story with respect to their families. They are old school, but they are legends, and they are the mold. They are the mold of what good local journalism and broadcasting should be, because they represent the community so well.
Wow, I did not know that. I did not know they were boots on the ground at that time.
I love stuff like this. That's I could talk about it all night. They were doing phone interviews on CBS radio every day from the time, I think every day, at least weekly, from the time that the murders happened until the trial, and then after the execution.
Yeah. I was in the library probably a month or two ago, and they have this like restricted section that you have to, and they had this whole folder on several volumes actually on Gene Simmons. And yeah, it was pretty intense, some of the stuff that was in there.
Yeah, it's horrific. It's horrific. And the people who brought that story to national prominence are the people that you can still see in a local restaurant to this day, and they'll stop and talk to you.
Yep. My grandpa was actually the one that he was. I'll just say he was among the first to clear that house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how? I mean, and tying it all back to broadcasting, it's still telling the story. Is that a story that needs to be told? It's not one that's fun to be told, but it's one that should be. And if I wanted anybody telling the story, I want somebody who's got integrity and a love for the city like Johnny Story does. Integrity and love for the city like Tom Camerling does. He was the voice of Arkansas Tech for 50 years. I mean, it's really hard for me to go to a Tech game now and not miss Tom's voice doing what it is that he does. And so you don't get that in bigger markets. It's not that feeling of connection, that feeling of just home. These guys are able to tell the story, but they're also able to tell your story because they know you. That's broadcasting at its absolute finest. I wanted to be national so bad when I started, and I realized how much I loved local quickly. I never really wanted to move out of the state after I got the first gig at Channel 7. I loved it because it was focused on the area and the state that I loved, and I understood why somebody like Johnny, who could have gone anywhere, I know he was offered by Little Rock stations. I am certain he was offered by Memphis stations. This guy had the voice and the talent and the charisma to go anywhere, but he stayed here because he loves it here, because he's Russellville. You just can't beat that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Drew, just thank you for coming on and sharing everything you've shared so far. And I know that we could do this again sometime, and you would.
Oh yeah,
I love listening to you, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Hey, just real quick, if you don't mind, Cyclone Broadcasting, Facebook and Instagram pages. It's at Cyclone Broadcasting. Our kids are doing an incredible job. Like I said, we have an NFL former NFL player coming on to one of our shows pretty soon. Mm-hmm. We've had Travis Simpson on. He's promoting his new book and talking about the finer points of Russellville journalism. We got an interview with Dr. Jenny McDonald, who just did a wonderful job. Our students run this program. Our students are going out there and getting UFC fighters who are fighting on December 2nd on ESPN. Our kids are doing that. Russellville kids, folks, are doing this. Don't let the cloud of nastiness that can be on social media about anything, about politics, religion, whatever it is, don't let the cloud distract you from the fact that where you live right now, amazing things are happening. Absolutely amazing things. 7-time Quiz Bowl champs. Come on, our kids are going to school anybody. Swim team champs, put them in the ocean. They will wrestle a shark. Golf just won a state championship. Ladies golf. Tennis, we just won conference and conference runner-up. The academic successes that these kids are doing. Robotics. They have won, I think, 4 state championships. And do you know how they build these robots, Tal? They get just a bunch of pieces together. There's not a some assembly required kit, and they just make them. They just make them. These are our students building robots, working with some of the best. We've got a kid who is personally being mentored by an Emmy Award winner right now in Russellville, Arkansas. Can you believe that? It's amazing to me. So don't let the cloud of negativity distract you from the fact that in this city, in our school district, in this town, great things are happening.